We got a couple minutes left, Caleb, and I want to give you a chance to elaborate on Joe Biden's so-called Summit for Democracy, which is actually a summit of hypocrisy. Explain that, please.
Well, I mean, the United States calls it democracy if you do what they say. And if you don't do what they say, then suddenly it stops being a democracy. Suddenly it's a dictatorship. And this Summit for Democracy, this is really just Joe Biden kind of rallying people against certain countries, demonizing certain countries to basically set the stage for more conflicts, more regime change, more economic sanctions, and more wars. It's not about democracy and human rights. This is a war propaganda summit, and that's why we at the Center for Political Innovation felt a need to counter it and put on a conference to oppose it.
Let me start by thanking everyone for participating in the second Summit of Democracies, for democracy, I should say. But more importantly, thank you for the work you've put in over the last 15 months to deliver on commitments you made to each other and to our peoples for the first summit from the first summit of democracy. Look,
what are the three major points you want people who come to the event this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, to better understand when they walk away from the event?
Well, one, Joe Biden has no grounds to lecture the world about democracy when he's suppressing third parties at home, when he's suppressing black revolutionary activists like the Uhuru movement and sending the FBI to raid their homes and calling them Russian agents for fighting for their people. Two, I would say that Joe Biden is full of deception, and what he claims about various countries in the world like Russia and China and Iran and Venezuela and Cuba doesn't add up to facts, and he presents a very one-sided narrative to these countries. And three, if you want to improve peace in the world and have a better world, the answer is not demonizing countries. It's bringing the world together with trade. Let's have countries do business with each other. Let's enter economic partnerships and cooperate. Let's not just demonize countries and put on a propaganda show to justify more wars and interventions. So basically, we need every folder to get one of each. One of each.
So it has to be like this, then pledge, then
I think
this
one's last.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then you have to have the
schedule.
and move down the line.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Because no, I was thinking the exact same mind as you. Like pass it down, like folder each one, but like we just grab one folder and then start back to the other side.
Okay, so what am I supposed to do here? Just grab one of each?
Yeah.
My name is Noah Shank, and I'm a rank and file member with the Center for Political Innovation. You know, I attend all the meetings, help set up with whatever conferences there are. I'm involved in several committees. I'm a Zoomer, and my generation is just so lost, and I myself was lost. Before I was involved with the Center for Political Innovation, I really had no hope for the future. Everything was doom and gloom, and I was about 80 pounds heavier than I am right now. To fight for the future, to fight for people around you, it really gives you purpose and meaning in life. And I started losing weight and studying, and coming home from the last conference, I was driving home and I was listening to the song, Amazing Grace. I was singing along to it. I once was lost and now I'm found. I started crying because I knew that I had found my place in the world.
My name is Jetta Domingo, and I'm a member of the Center for Political Innovation. I saw Caleb in some streams during the Bernie campaign, and I started following him and read his books and looked at his website.
I was trying to get answers about what socialism and communism actually were. My full name is Tyler McConnell. I am one of the board of directors. In the Obama era, everyone said Obama was a socialist. I knew that wasn't true. Americans wanted a little bit more with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders called himself a socialist, but he was doing these, I would call it pussyfooting around communism is what I would call it.
We're very opposed to the authoritarian nature of Cuba.
So I started looking up what is communism. The best person I found to explain it was Caleb Moffitt. Caleb started CPI. I wanted to be a part of it.
I want to live for something bigger than myself.
For me, it represents an optimistic future for the American people.
In my eyes, CPI represents the paradigm shift that we need in this country towards the revolutionary spirit that America was founded upon. My name is Simon Miller, and I am a member. Really, it's gonna come from educating people and giving people a practical alternative to the complete nonsense that is everything in the status quo.
The Center for Political Innovation is an organization that is intended to teach people the reality of U.S. imperialism and the global capitalist system, what it's doing to the world. You expose the truth about countries that are under attack, the reality of the U.S. economy and how the big multinational corporations are ripping people off.
My name is Peter Coffin, and I am a member of the Center for Political Innovation. My involvement with CPI, I have a very particular set of skills.
That's really what presidential politics is all about, isn't it? Finding a group of people in dire need, convincing them that you're the only one that can solve their problems, and then immediately ignoring them like the check engine light on your car's dashboard. Yeah, that thing isn't going away without some attention, but the president bought this car for a song on Craigslist. The fact it runs at all is amazing.
I speak at events. I'm the one putting together this documentary. I'm eye candy. I bring the boys to the yard. Basically, I kind of try to do what I can to show people what CPI really is. And in my eyes, that's just something that I don't see anywhere else. I'm a very picky individual, and there's a whole lot of communist organizations out there, but I have never gotten this involved in one. I don't believe in the other ones.
Quick point of privilege.
I don't believe in the actions they take. I really don't particularly like watching them all tail the Democrats. The Democrats are just as much a problem as the Republicans. The fact that there are only two major political parties that have a real chance at doing anything, it's awful and ridiculous. So let's say a communist party came along, because we're not a communist party. Caleb likes to say that we're one part of an orchestra, and then he often lists a bunch of instruments.
Trombones and drums and basses and pianos and trumpets. A real revolutionary party is like an orchestra. And CPI is one instrument in that orchestra.
He's really committed to that analogy in the best way. But when a party comes along, you must whip it. No.
A real revolutionary party would have, for example, labor unions associated with it, community associations, people would run for office, there would be a newspaper, media outlets, there would be street outreach teams, there would be a massive organization. A real revolutionary party is a concentration of people that are at the center of big struggles that are taking place. CPI is not a revolutionary party, and we're not a pre-party formation. We are one entity. We are carrying out one function, which is to build community, bring people together, and teach socialism and anti-imperialism, keep the tradition alive, and stand in solidarity with oppressed countries around the world as we build up class consciousness here at home.
Biden's Summit for Democracy is basically this complete sham.
He invited all the countries that are still willing to bow down to the U.S. hegemon.
That are so threatened by the U.S. that they feel they have to come.
And, stand around while Biden virtue signals about how democratic the United States is while calling other countries evil.
What Biden's Summit for Democracy is a steaming pile of horse.
And it was really an opportunity to gather all of these color revolution, human rights activists funded by the United States and rally the troops for more destabilization of countries, more creating instability around the world, more toppling governments, more demonizing countries that have broken out of the Western capitalist financial system.
We don't have democracy in the West, and every time any country around the world decides to break free from the chains that we have shackled them with, we decide that it's our responsibility to put them back in their place.
And the propaganda is really aimed at China, and it's aimed at reinforcing this long-standing imperialist lie that as a country ruled by a communist party, there's no democracy in China. I'm Jyoti Brar, from the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist, and we have a fraternal relationship with Comrade Caleb Maupin and with the Centre for Political Innovation. And you can see again from the list of invited countries, they'll invite South Korea, which is basically a proxy puppet state with a fascistic government and a huge US army of occupation. That's a democracy. But People's Korea, that's run by a communist party in the interests of the masses of the people with a real participatory democracy, that's not a democracy. They use words, twist words, turn them upside down, in fact, to make us feel that the countries who we should be identifying with are our enemies.
All right. Well, my vision was that we would have a powerful conference in Washington, D.C., bring together different forces, hear from different voices to challenge Joe Biden's pro-imperialist propaganda show.
The title is Perfect, the Summit Against Hypocrisy.
In the lead up to the event, there was certainly many things that needed to be done. There were obstacles. What do you think? It's a yeah?
I think it's a yeah.
It's a yeah. Okay. It was kind of like you're just on the train and you keep going. My name is Elizabeth Young and I'm the president of the Center for Political Innovation.
Elizabeth Young is amazing, and she has done so much to hold our organization together, to help people get along, to facilitate the activities of the Center for Political Innovation.
The things that I did leading up to it were many logistical challenges, I would say. Getting physical materials in place, making the connections, and recruiting volunteers from our membership to take on different roles and tasks, and people are really great about stepping up to that.
She's very skilled at what she does, and she's very dedicated. It's really, really an honor to have Elizabeth Young as the president of CPI.
This isn't working.
Do we have another,
Record? You need
just one of these types of clips? Because I feel like...
actually, I don't know if I have another one of those.
I don't know, I help move crap around and basically put in some manual labor with everybody else. I had my spinach.
I participated in the setting up mostly, more than I did the organizing of the Summit Against Hypocrisy. And the day prior to the event, myself, Caleb Maupin, and our president, Elizabeth Young, went to a storage unit, got lots of the stuff we needed out of storage, including lots of flags that once we got back to the house, I was ironing. 7, 8 flags, something like that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
They made it, right?
Yeah, so where are they? Did you at least saw them out the house?
What?
We're bringing them out at like a glorious moment. Like they're hidden at the beginning. So someone has to go back and get Stalin them out.
I will go get them.
No more Stalin, we gotta get it.
All right. Stop Stalin and go get them out. Anyway.
It was go, go, go. I woke up, ate breakfast, got in the car with Peter and some other comrades, and got cameras and equipment, supplies and whatnot.
We put a lot of work into staging the conferences.
El pueblo unido jamás.
Haas and Pfeffer Incorporated.
What's the last part go?
Jamás.
Unloaded the car, I put up the banners, spread the books out. So I'm a school teacher with $60, $70, $80,000 in student debt. I really don't know. I try not to think about it that much, but it's a lot. So I had to buy a $500 plane ticket on a $2,000 a month paycheck. Luckily, the hotel had a continental breakfast. That helped out. But yeah, I'm broke till the next payday. But I wanted to be there. It meant a lot to me to be there.
I'm now thinking of eating fried rice.
Free food gang represent is all I'm saying.
But I did also eat a bunch of Danishes like a minute ago, so that wouldn't be. A, aftertaste, and B, I would get fat very.
There's a very simple principle that people from a working class background understand, and it is that when there's free food, you eat it. And especially if you're spending all morning moving a bunch of heavy crap around, big bins of water bottles, crates of books. Yeah, you gotta eat. And our convention was a paying customer of the hotel. amazing Danishes there.
Our political opponents, people in the ruling class, the class enemy, spend a long time staging propaganda for imperialism, staging events to stir people up, to support war. You look at the Democrat convention, the Republican convention. So it's necessary for those of us who are serious about building a socialist community to work hard to make our events well staged and well put together, practicing the opening ceremony, making sure that everything goes the way it should go. We put a lot of work into that, and I think that's important. And, you know, you have to practice things. So after Jetta, when Garland is done speaking, Jetta will then call Peter up to the podium, and even if it's not 3 o'clock yet, we'll go right into the next one. Second panel. After that second panel is over, Peter's going to call me up, and I'm going to invite people to do our White House thing. The other thing is, we really want to get this room looking as clean as we possibly can. The next thing we got to do is that when the sound is set up, we'll practice the opening ceremony then. Great. I think we're good to go.
You hear these words, human rights and democracy, and you just think, good, that has to be good, freedom, liberty, human rights, democracy. And so putting the title in there and with that spin, Summit Against Hypocrisy, it's calls their bluff right there. It's right in the title. The intention is to draw the attention of the public to the fact that these words that they feel good about, that they're supposed to care about and be invested in, are being used maliciously. They're being used coercively. And to me, that's a trick that's being played on people.
All right, let's do this. All right.
Okay.
Shall we? Okay. We know you through different names. Some of us know you through the Talmud and the Torah. Some of us know you through Jesus and the Bible. Some of us know you through the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad. Some of us know you only through the beautiful, ever-changing world you've created. God, we just want to do our part, our little part, in opposing all the injustice and evil and standing for truth. And speaking to people in a way that they can hear it. Getting people to open their hearts and open their minds to understand that something better is possible. Oh God, we just ask that you join us today. Help us. Speak through us. Let us do something beautiful today. Let us do something powerful today. Let this be a day people remember for the rest of their lives, God.
CPI represents the only alternative to what we're hearing from the burn it down, tear it down, synthetic left.
Fear is a part of our tactics.
A lot of people think that we're like burning our city down and we're rioting and destroying everything. I mean, I think there's some level of truth to that.
No one else is saying that you can actually be patriotic in that you love this country and you love the people, but you despise the people who are running it. We want to build a better America. The working class is not interested in tear it down, burn it down. We want good jobs, stable lives. The people that we're looking for, they're not going to be found among the people who classify themselves as leftists now. They're going to be found among working class Americans who love their country.
And we're not about jamming our morals and ideals down anybody's throat. We're about reaching people and attempting to spread knowledge. And that means you're going to disagree with some people at some times. That said, no one is less of a person because they think something different about how the economy is going to be run, or because they don't understand a cultural issue, or because they don't like the way they feel like they're being pressured to act within society. Yeah, it's certainly possible for that stuff to be messed up, but if our assumption is just that everybody's like evil,
a fascist is a fascist,
we're not going to get anywhere. And if you've got that in mind, it should be obvious why we would have somebody like Scott Ritter to speak. Like, he's got this cool idea, I forget what it's called. Oh yeah, not having a nuclear war.
I am the epitome of a Reagan Republican. I grew up child of a Cold War. My dad was career military, and the first president I voted for was Ronald Reagan. I believed in war. I wanted war. I worshiped war because war was my salvation. Salvation from you. You communist-loving socialists. All jokes aside, though, it's an absolute honor and a privilege to be here. For the very reasons I just said. Because while we may not be cut from the same piece of cloth, we do seek to be sewn into the common clothing of a nation that needs to be shielded from the nakedness of its imperial ambition.
Yeah.
Well, let's call it the American standard, the new American standard. Yeah. Sitting down and talking.
Imperial capitalism is bloated to the point where those worldwide conflicts become necessary in order to hold things together. And the only way we're going to beat it is by understanding that everybody has a say. Everybody is worth talking to and working with on at least some level.
The paradigm that many people operate under, that I had before operated under, was, a very simplified view of the world and the types of things that we're giving people information about. These aren't easy things to settle with. They're things that unsettle you, things that change your paradigm and your view of the world. So, I really liked Garland's style of relating to people and the way that he inserts those little brainworms for people. He used that analogy of the bike shorts.
To me, the brain is kind of like a pair of biker shorts. A pair of biker shorts, they're kind of tight, they fit real tight, right? And if you start gaining a few pounds and they stretch and stretch and stretch, and after a while, if they stretch but so big, even if you lose the weight, the biker shorts will never come back to where they were before. And if you give people certain pieces of information, no matter how hard they try, they can't lose those pieces of information.
I think that analogy sits perfectly.
He talked a lot about the stuff that I generally talk about that's really important to me.
How to talk to people who have opposing views.
I don't think you convince anyone by arguing with them.
Other people don't change our mind, we change our own mind. And in an online first world where we're constantly being bombarded with the attack impulse of be in your face, be confrontational, I feel like that's a very good reminder to have.
What I was talking about is having the confidence and patience to say to people, here's a contradiction. Boom, boom, look at that. That's a bunch of foolishness. Okay. And walk away and leave. Because sooner or later, if you are right, if you really believe you're right, reality is going to teach them.
My favorite speaker was Jody Brar. She's the leader of the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist. It was very inspirational, especially when she spoke about feeling helpless as a parent under monopoly capitalism, under imperialism, under this system.
You're looking at an impotent parent right here, right? Watching teenage children go through all of this, but utterly powerless to help them. Because they're not old enough yet to know that I actually understand what they're going through and that I understand the world that they live in. I'm mum. So I know nothing. And they're in a world that doesn't give them what they need, and I can't give it to them either. Because what they need is social.
There's a lot of things that don't make sense, like how college admission is being done here in the US and the tuition that they impose on the kids and even getting a job afterwards. There's a lot of pressure on the young people.
We have the chance to ensure that the criminal provocation of a third world war by our profit-hungry rulers leads to a fresh revolutionary wave, and to ensure also that this time we are able to see it through to the finish.
Jyoti has such a breadth of knowledge. To just be able to talk about Marxism for 2.5 hours, coherently, brilliant speaker.
Jody Brar from the British Communist Party, she's absolutely brilliant. Would I miss this event in person? No way.
I really love Dr. Wilmer's speech. He is also someone very inspirational, very intelligent, always interesting to listen to.
If the promotion of democracy is at the top of the Biden administration's list, why is he, Joe Biden, still pursuing the Trump administration's persecution and extradition of Julian Assange. If promotion of democracy is still truly at the top of the Biden agenda, why is diplomat Alex Saab still in a prison in Florida? Democracies will continue to deliver for their people if the United States gets out of the way. Thank you.
I wanted to lay out the Marxist understanding of economics, the problem of overproduction, and the tendency of the falling rate of profit. I also wanted to talk about why leftism has been distorted and the synthetic left and what it really means to be a socialist and how the CIA and their money has muddled and confused everything.
I'm going to explain what needs to be explained, what used to be considered Marxism 101, about why it is that our Western capitalist economy is crashing and burning. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to do some math. And I hate math. Do you know why I hate math? Because I grew up in America. I went to public school in the United States of America, so I am going to, at risk of embarrassing myself, because math was never my best subject, I am going to do some mathematics here on the board for you to explain the problem.
I very much enjoyed Caleb's speech.
So if you are creating a product, right? If you're a factory owner, you're making a product, you are going to need the material through which that product is made, the manufacturing materials. So that'll be A.
The simple equation you put forward to explain the crisis of overproduction and the falling rate of profit.
And you're probably going to need to transport the product to where it's sold. That's B.
It broke down where your money goes.
You're also going to have to pay your labor costs. Labor costs are represented by C.
Explanations of those concepts that people are able to understand.
Then when consumers purchase the product, they're going to pay a final price. And that final price is D. However, there's a problem with that.
I like the fact that he framed it that way to make it very clear.
Which is that the capitalist can't change how much A costs. He can't change how much B costs. So the profit of the capitalist can only be extracted from the value put into it by the worker. And this is the basis of Marxism, the understanding of surplus value.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere. I've never been able to explain it that simply.
So C, the labor value, is divided. You have C1, which is what the worker actually gets paid. And then you have C2, which is the profit that the capitalist makes. And it all adds up to D, which is the final cost of the product. Now, the way people in the United States who talk about Marxism generally talk about this is they say, well, this is unfair. They say the worker is not getting paid the full value of his labor. But they're missing one of the most important points, which is not just that it's unfair and then people argue, well, what about the employer? He put up the money, doesn't he deserve to be? That's all a distraction. Because the important thing to understand is this. C1 is always going to be less than D. The wages paid out to the worker are never enough to buy back the product that he produces. There is always more products created than there are wages paid out to the worker. And this is the built-in problem of capitalism, the problem of overproduction. And it is always there in the capitalist economy. It never goes away. And they have invented all kinds of crazy mechanisms to try and deal with the problem of overproduction. Part of the reason that the US government has purchased billions and billions of dollars worth of cheese only to bury it in a cave in Springfield, Missouri, is to deal with this problem. It is an ongoing present problem, and it's a problem acknowledged by most capitalist economists. John Maynard Keynes said the problem was underconsumption rather than overproduction, but he was pointing to the same problem. The military-industrial complex in the United States is an effort to deal with this problem, to keep spending going. There's all kinds of mechanisms that they've invented to try and resolve this problem, but it gets worse. What is the capitalist always trying to do? He wants to maximize the amount of profit he makes. And one of the main ways they do that is with what's called labor-saving technology. Get rid of workers and replace workers with machines. As they eliminate workers from the process of production, as there's fewer and fewer workers involved, as machines take the place of workers, the role of C in production decreases. There's a little bit of a problem with that. As C goes down, C2 also goes down, right? As C decreases, C2 also decreases. And as the role of the worker in production is reduced, the rate of profit that the capitalist makes goes down. And this is called the tendency of the falling rate of profit. Only human labor creates value. And this is something that Adam Smith acknowledged. This is something some of the popes even acknowledge. Human labor creates all value. And so when you reduce the role of human labor in production, the amount of value created decreases, and the ability of the capitalist to extract surplus value also decreases. So this causes the capitalist to have to churn out even more products because he's making less and less of a profit on the overall product. He's making less and less of a percentage, so he has to churn them out. So this problem of the worker never being able to buy back what he produces and more products being created than are necessary, this problem becomes exacerbated. And this points to what is understood to be the deeply irrational nature of the capitalist system.
Towards the end, I did start to get passionate. I told some stories from my own past and how I got involved in it and what this movement and socialism has really meant in my life, how grateful I am for the older communists who mentored me. I've made a lot of sacrifices to be where I am, but I've also gotten a lot of help and mentorship over the years, and I want to acknowledge that.
Really one of the most interesting nights of my life, which is when I was invited to speak at the hall where Malcolm X was assassinated in Harlem. There was a political prisoner's benefit. And it was a political prisoner's benefit. There were supporters of people from the Move 9 who were still locked up at that point. There were supporters of Mumia Abu Jamal and Jamil Al-Amin. And I walked into this auditorium and they had like a light where at the spot where Malcolm X had died, and I was on a panel and I was like the one white guy there. People were joking about the flyer and they're like, one of these speakers is a little bit different than all the other ones. But, I was the only white guy there, and I looked out on that audience. I spoke for like 3 minutes. It was a very short presentation. But when I looked out on that crowd of several hundred people in there, I thought, I am speaking to a group of veterans. I looked out on that crowd because these were black liberation fighters. These were Black Panthers. These were, Black Liberation Army former members. These were black nationalists and others, and in walkers. And when people were speaking, they were shaking and having flashbacks, and there were a lot of tears in their eyes. And I thought, this is like a veterans gathering. This is like speaking at the VFW, right? And I mean, there's rooms like this in Ireland, in Northern Ireland. There's rooms like this in South Africa. There's rooms like this in People's Korea. And this is a group of people who have made great sacrifices, and they're there to support their comrades who are still locked up, and they're in this for real, and they've seen it. And I looked out on that crowd, and I thought, again, these are people who understand how serious it is, and this is how important all of this can be.
Communism will save America. China has created a system that's raising up its poorest people, its peasants, raised out of poverty. They're creating a system that gets to the base of the economy and recreates it so that the working class can rise. Unlike in this country, where homeless people sleep a block from the White House.
After the summit, we protested against the Museum of the Victims of Communism, which is nothing but spreading pro-imperialist lies, demonizing the history of the Soviet Union and China.
So trying to fight something that literally causes circumstantial change. Well, instead of fighting against people around the world, we should be fighting against those bankers who set up that situation. We should be building a coalition of people with different perspectives. We're going to stand up against big banks and corporations. That's what I think.
You're looking at Country Joe and the Fish. Little known fact, there was a band that played at Woodstock called Country Joe and the Fish Band. And the reason they have that name, according to every source that I can check, is because their parents were members of the Communist Party USA, and they picked the name for some pretty interesting reasons. Now, this guy was Country Joe because he was from Georgia, from the countryside. He grew up in a small village. He was the son of a bootmaker. And this guy was the Fish because one of his most well-known quotations, before he even started his organization, he just walked 300 miles through the countryside, talking to every person he could meet, asking them about the conditions of their life, engaging with them. He says, how should we judge whether or not a youth is a revolutionary? How can we tell? Well, there can only be one criteria, namely, whether or not he's willing to integrate himself with the broad masses of the workers and the peasants, and he does so in practice. The masses are the water, and the revolutionaries are the fish. Country Joe and the fish.
We are educating, we're agitating, we're demonstrating, and we're normal people. That's the best part. Pretty normal.
Let's fix our government right here at home to provide for working people before we go 7,000 miles away to waste young, precious lives over something as dumb as anti-communism.
Afterwards, a few of us went to New York City to protest against Tsai Ing-wen, the Taiwan president.
All the polls show the American people don't want a new war. The American people are sick and tired of our money being wasted on bombs and weapons and destruction, provoking a war with China, provoking a war with Russia, while our dreams are derailing, people in the United States are suffering.
Tsai Ing-wen came to the United States to beg for more weapons and to demonize China. And the Center for Political Innovation, we were in the streets of New York City confronting the Taiwan president and her effort to spread war.
China is not our enemy. China is not our enemy. China is not our enemy. Get out of our country. Stop trying to sell war in our country. Stop trying to sell war in our country. We don't want a new war with China. We love America and we don't want a new war with China. China is not our enemy. Stop trying to sell war. Get out of our country. Stop trying to sell war.
You know, what we did with Tsai Ing-wen, that went viral in Chinese media. Over 1 million shares. I was interviewed about it by Global Times. The Global Times, one of the main publications in China, made a point of highlighting the Center for Political Innovation, finding out about our work and why we do what we do. That was really, really great.
I'm a patriotic American. I love my country and I don't want World War III.
After all is said and done, Summit for Hypocrisy was a great success, and we can see that success. Look at all of the leftoids tailing us. They were calling us fringe, they were calling us cringe, and then a week later they all shut up, and then they started copying our organizing tactics. And I'm glad that they do. We know what the problem is, we are offering solutions.
In my eyes, CPI represents faith in humanity and the belief that there is an optimistic future to fight for, that your neighbor and the people around you aren't just stupid and in your way, but actually the hope for the future is in building relationships.
So communists everywhere, and especially in the imperialist countries, have a big job in front of them. Imperialist media dominance, which makes it very hard to break through and to connect the understanding that we have to bring with the wider audience.
All of these media personalities that get promoted and blasted in front of people that are calling themselves communists, a lot of these people are just as happy as they can be to embody all of the Cold War stereotypes and the liberal stereotypes and all these things that have built up over decades. When somebody says, like, you socialists, you just want to take everything from everybody because you don't want to actually have to work for anything in your lives, rather than reply with, no, we're normal people and we care about where we, the working people of the United States, are going to be in 20 years. Instead of saying something like that, they go like, yeah, you're damn right, I don't want to have to work.
CPI is overcoming this. We explain the difference between real Marxism and this bogus new left ideology that all the mainstream communist parties have been peddling for years. We clearly show that there are practical, meaningful solutions that can be easily communicated to the masses. That is the real difference that CPI has and how it's getting over that hurdle.
It's helped me learn so much. It's helped me realize that your goal isn't to get a gun and storm DC. That's stupid. That's suicide. Your goal is to demonstrate to people that you, the communists, are the most willing to go to the mat for me, to help me keep my home, to offer me something that can actually change my life and my kids' lives. How about an economic bill of rights? We're the richest country in the history of the world. We just sent like $100 billion to the Ukraine. That into homelessness in this country like 5 times over. Everyone should have a home. Everyone should have a job. Everyone should have health care. How you gonna pay for it? Nationalization of natural resources. That's how we're gonna pay for it. We don't pussyfoot around it. That's what we're gonna do. And I'm excited about CPI. Because they just say it in a 4-point plan. You can go to our website, it says it right there.
The CPI is doing its best to help people to come back to that understanding.
Since June of 2021, CPI has accomplished a great deal. When Alex Saab was extradited to the United States, CPI organized an emergency last-minute protest in support of Venezuela. The protest was held in Times Square in New York City, and Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, mentioned it in a speech several hours after it happened. Yeah. Just after Russia's denazification operation began in Ukraine, the March 2022 conference featured a number of prominent social media personalities and was packed full of people. The website trutherfiction.com had to put up a page clarifying that the anti-imperialist gathering featuring the Soviet flag, the US flag, and the flag of the Donetsk People's Republic was indeed real and not an internet hoax. On February 19th, CPI was an official sponsor of the biggest anti-war protest in Washington, D.C. in almost 20 years, and we were honored to participate. In addition to our in-person activities, CPI has published a number of different books, the first of which was our own edition of The Green Book by Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. The CPI edition is the top-selling and top-rated version of the book on Amazon, and over 2,000 copies have been sold or distributed. CPI published Kamala Harris and the Future of America. The book was widely reviewed in not only U.S. publications, but in print magazines in the UK and India. One key aspect of the Center for Political Innovation has been exposing the synthetic left. The CPI book, Bread Tube Serves Imperialism, which revealed the relationship of certain pro-imperialist synthetic socialist internet personalities in the relationship they have to the U.S. intelligence apparatus, was the top-selling book on Amazon in the anarchism category for over 2 weeks. The book inspired and laid the basis for investigative journalism done by Grey Zone that revealed further links to the intelligence community, including direct funding of Abigail Thorne, also known as Philosophy Tube, by the British royal family and MI6 linked foundations.
As a hilarious bonus, that project, dedicated to giving unvaccinated people a voice, was funded with a grant from the Open Society Foundation, which means it was literally paid for by George Soros.
So as our organization has rapidly expanded over the course of the past 2 years, we have faced a number of attacks. One of the main organizations that has worked against the Center for Political Innovation is the Communist Party USA. Ironically, yeah. Because CPI largely does the kind of educational work that the Communist Party fails to do. It is a well-documented historical fact that the Communist Party USA has been under the control of the FBI since at least 1958, if not earlier. Boris Child is a top FBI informant inside the Communist Party National Board, received the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his work controlling the Communist Party and using it to feed disinformation to the Soviet Union. The details of Operation Solo are now public record. The Communist Party, despite having a huge amount of money and property, does very little other than campaign for Democrats. The Communist Party was so threatened by CPI that they published a scathing hit piece full of lies and waged an obsessive year-long internal campaign against CPI. But we consider this a compliment. We will continue to do our best to hold this pro-NATO, FBI-controlled Democratic Front organization accountable as we carry out this revolutionary work. What calls itself the left in America is anything but that. CPI dares to acknowledge the unspeakable history of the Congress for Cultural Freedom program and how left-wing politics was intentionally reinvented by the U.S. intelligence during the Cold War. The stakes are getting higher in U.S. politics, and the situation is becoming more serious every day. We want to do everything possible to expand anti-imperialist and socialist consciousness in America and to lay the basis for the varied struggles ahead. Thank you.
This is an example of normal people talking about the real problems. We don't want a new war. We don't want people dead. We don't want to exploit the entire world. What we want is the ability to work, build a life, have a future. That's the things that Americans want, and that's the things that everybody around the entire world wants. And we want that for us and everyone, and that's the point.
CPI offers a positive message, a positive politics for a negative time. To anyone who is thinking about coming to one of these events, to anyone who's wondering if it's worth it, it absolutely is. You'll meet a lot of great people.
I'm looking forward to what the future holds. I'm looking forward to more conferences, more live events, more books that's going to be written, more interventions by the CPI members, especially the young people in the group. They're very determined, very smart. They really care about the American people.
What I'm most excited about the potential of CPI is the fact that we actually can speak to the problems of everyday people, that we can offer solutions for everyday people. And most of all, being able to bring people in to have an understanding themselves. We can give them the tools to be able to do that. And also, not everybody needs to be an expert in everything, but we empower people.
We can talk all day about socialism and revolution and how we have the correct idea, how if only we were in power, everything would be perfect. But at the end of the day, you have to have a roadmap toward moving ahead, and that means a united front. We need to be serious about this. The time for just being on the internet and proclaiming that you're the most revolutionary, you're so revolutionary, the time for that is over. It's about moving ahead and building real concrete organizations. People don't care. If you just get on the internet and ramble about communism, no one cares. But if you build a real organization, you do educational conferences to really show people the truth, you stage anti-imperialist demonstrations, you build a real community, that scares the ruling class. And they want to stop that. They want to nip that in the bud. That's why they've come after us so viciously. But we just keep going. And we have a lot of very good, dedicated people who aren't going to budge.
We will move on to our resolution. And once it is read, we will take a vote. We, the undersigned, wish to formally announce our opposition to Joe Biden's Summit for Democracy gathering set to happen on March 28th and 29th, 2023. While the event appears to be dedicated to universal values like human rights and civil liberties, it is in reality something far more sinister. It is a calculated public relations attack on specific countries intended to incite hostility and pave the way for more economic sanctions, regime change operations, and war. It is almost comical that the Republic of Korea, the US-backed regime in the southern half of the Korean peninsula, is a co-sponsor of Biden's propaganda fest. Biden and his counterparts in South Korea will undoubtedly use the conference to spread lies about the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and help lay out the case for threats, economic warfare, and regime change operations on the Korean peninsula. We want talks to continue the path towards peaceful reunification of the Korean peninsula and the withdrawal of all US forces from Korea, not more threats and division. Biden and his guests will most likely engage in demonizing the Communist Party of China, an organization responsible for lifting hundreds of millions of people from poverty, that empowers people and involves the Chinese people in the governing process, and has vastly expanded access to education, healthcare, electricity, and running water for the people, not just in China but across the world, has far more to teach the world about the advancement of human progress than Joe Biden ever could. Biden and his guests will play up allegations against Russia in the hopes of justifying and prolonging the conflict in Ukraine, instead of moving towards a peaceful resolution. Billions of US dollars from taxpayers flows into the hands of the torturing, civilian-killing, human rights violating Ukrainian regime. This is unacceptable to those of us who want to see peace and to see the ongoing consequences of the war, as in terms of global food and energy crisis, as well as the rising body count of civilians and refugees. We expect Biden will give a platform to voices demonizing countries like Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba that have adopted socialism as their economic system. Biden will present these countries as somehow undemocratic, despite their respective people showing overwhelming support for the project of building a socialist society and experiencing very real improvements in their quality of life. The policies of the White House at home show us that Biden certainly has no authority with which to lecture the world about human rights. The single most blatant example of Biden's hypocrisy on this end has been the raid on the homes of the members of the Uhuru movement and the African People's Socialist Party. This organization of black revolutionaries must be left alone and allowed to organize in the black community for anti-imperialism and empowerment without state repression. Biden lectures the world on human rights when it is well known that he sexually assaulted Tara Reade, one of his staffers. Even Vice President Kamala Harris has said that she believes what the various women who have come forward about Biden's tendency for unwanted sexual contact have said. Not only is Biden guilty of sexual assault against Tara Reade, but he and his allies have waged a public relations campaign intended to discredit and silence Reade and prevent her not only from speaking out, but of making a living, feeling safe in her own home. The Biden administration that raids the home of black revolutionaries, that whips up anti-Asian stereotypes and racist tropes about Asiatic despotism, that presides over a system of mass incarceration which locks away millions, and that backs the Azov battalion in Ukraine, has no legitimacy with which to label anyone a white supremacist, an extremist, a fascist, or a terrorist. The outrageous practice of pinning nasty labels like this intended to justify government repression on Biden's critics, dissident elements, concerned parents, or those who practice their religious faith must end immediately. The Biden administration continues to pursue the extradition of Julian Assange, a heroic journalist who has committed no crime other than publishing information provided to him by leakers. Assange has been the subject to years of torture and imprisonment simply for letting the world see the ugly truths about the U.S. deep state and its operations. All the charges against Julian Assange must be dropped, and he should be immediately set free. The information presented above should completely discredit the Biden administration and its upcoming dog and pony show. We, the undersigned, call for a new approach in U.S. foreign policy, one that seeks peace through development, win-win cooperation between countries for peace, international friendship, and economic cooperation. We sign this document indicating we stand in opposition to Biden's administration and his Summit for Democracy, which is nothing but a war propaganda show. That is the resolution presented today. And now we are going to do the most important part, which is we're going to take a vote. So, based on what I just read, the resolution we have presented, all of you who are in favor of the resolution, please say aye. Aye! And all against, please raise your hand. I don't see a single hand. What that means is that our resolution today has passed unanimously with every single vote in the House. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. We're calling out hypocrisy, folks. Thank you so much.
You know, no one seemed to notice the typo on our banner, right? We spelled reunification without one I. There was an I missing.